Everyone, are you able to see my screen?
Yes, Chris. Yes,
Yes,
we
we
can.
are able
Yes.
to.
Very good, very good. So we are hearing voices, very good. So today's agenda is about, just as an introduction for the NetApp portfolio, it's like a refresh. So what's new, like displaying the portfolio like a story, which is a hybrid cloud or multi-cloud story. And then we move to the VDS, which is our virtual desktop service from NetApp. And we will finish with the GFC part, which is mainly caching technology from NetApp. So to start with, I will go quickly through the portfolio itself, but I would like to highlight that, yes, our world is changing. So the way we used to have legacy application centralized in a single location, we less distributed application, majority of the application are not cloud native or based on containers. Customer used to have on-prem majority of his environment, okay, and remote sites. However, the introduction of new technology trends, okay, like IoT, like data analytics, this has changed the whole discussion, and it has moved that discussion between the infrastructure and the application level, and mainly the data itself. So the most important point here is the user, actually, the business. So we have to talk about the business first. And when we talk about the business, we need data that will give us insights about our client or our customers. Okay, so that data is very important, and we need to discover that data. We need to manage it, organize that data because of control it because of compliance. So we have to display that data for this business unit, but not for the other one. So, and also we have to consume that data by developing certain application around that data to deliver better experience to our customers. Okay, so this is part of the transformation that happened during the last few years. Now, this is the nature of the data itself. So data is distributed. You will find data that is generated from multiple sources, not only at the data center. Okay, you'll find in shops, okay, in the cloud. Okay. So also the data is dynamic, is keep changing and diversified. You find structured, okay, data like databases, unstructured like videos, images. Okay, so this is the nature of the data itself. And to deal with all of this, we need to virtualize the data layer. So this is the vision of NetApp. NetApp is trying to have a single unified, okay, data virtualized data layer that is combining, okay, all of these source of data, okay, or all of these deployments, whether on-prem or on cloud, private cloud, multi-cloud. Okay, so customer doesn't need to worry whenever he moves the data from one place to another in order to apply analytics, okay, or to analyze at the same place of the source of the data. It doesn't have to worry about bringing multiple tools and adding complexity in order to manage this. So this is the idea of the data fabric as a high level. Now, why NetApp? NetApp because it's a software company. So more than 20 years, okay, of innovation when it comes to, especially when it comes to ONTAP, our operating system. Okay, so it's mainly like software company with a vision of a cloud vision, okay, to become a cloud service provider. So this is our portfolio, okay, in a single slide. So you see when the transformation itself, okay, to modernize the infrastructure. So the transformation starts at the business level, at the customer. However, in order to allow, or the enabler of that transformation at the business level is the infrastructure itself, or the platform that the customer is having. And that platform should be modernized. So the first thing to do is to shift from a traditional storage to an all-flash storage, and that is our AFF system, okay, or our E-series system, which are mainly powered by Centricity operating system, while AFF is powered by ONTAP, okay, and also our Element software-defined storage. So this is the first phase of the transformation journey, is to introduce all flash because of the performance, because of the policy-based storage. So the developer doesn't have to go to the storage admin and tell him, please create that volume, because so everything has to be automated. The second step is to build like a dedicated or architecture, like a reference architecture, and build at speed, where the go-to-market will be faster. So here we are talking about greenfield deployments, or we are talking about specialized application. Like, for example, if I will be running analytics, so we want, let us say, a FlexPod that is supporting artificial intelligence and analytics, deep learning. So it will be powered by GPUs, this reference architecture. The customer can deploy within a matter of like 1 day or few days, okay, maximum. So this is this will allow the go-to-market, okay, to be very fast. We don't have to wait for long procurement process. Also, our HCI is the same. We can scale up, scale down, adding a node without disrupting the environment. So this is the idea of the hyper-converged or converged infrastructure. Okay, while for traditional storage, you need to procure the SAN switches, you need to procure, so you wait sometimes, okay, in order to build that environment. Now, one more closer to the hybrid cloud, okay, is our, or multi-cloud, is our extension, where our ONTAP is at the center of this data fabric extension. Okay, so we have the services in the cloud, which is Cloud Volume ONTAP. So that service, you will be having a unified management portal, which will allow you to move the data between on-prem to cloud and vice versa, and at the same time protect that data. Okay, and also for object storage, we have Storage Grid, which will allow us to use the object storage on-prem, and at the same time you can tier to cloud, or you can use it on the cloud itself, and it comes with different version, okay, software or hardware appliance. And also our Trident and Project Astra. So these are mainly related to containers, okay, and these allow us to have dynamic provisioning. And the last, which is to leverage public cloud service. So NetApp is not anymore a storage company, okay, where it sells only, for example, a fast system or only AFF system. Okay? We have lots of services which the customer can consume, okay, and you can guide the customer and provide them consultancy how to use those services and leverage those services. So you can have those services in a combination with other solutions that you are selling to the customer. This will enhance the value proposition with respect to the customer. Okay, so and at the end, all of this need to be governed or need to be managed, okay, and optimized. So here we are talking about our famous software, which is Cloud Insight, where it will allow you to monitor heterogeneous environments, okay, and it will provide you analytics, also Active IQ, which is powered by, this is similar to auto support, but it's powered by artificial intelligence. Okay, so it will provide the customer remediation, okay, in order to fix the environment, capacity management, performance management, so all of these nice features. So to start first with modernizing the flash itself, okay, so here we have seen the shift between legacy. If you see on the right, legacy application are mainly
Christian, sorry for interrupting. Does NetApp have a pay-as-you-go model for on-premise?
As-you-go model on-premise, you mean?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, not in this region at the moment. This is mainly called Keystone. Okay, so this is like a managed service, okay, fully managed, but this is not actually in this region. I'm not sure when it will be in this region. Did I answer your question?
Yes, yes, thank you.
Yeah. So the move between, initially, majority of the application were traditional application. You would see, for example, Oracle, SQL, relying on certain database, SAP on DB2, for example, SAP on Oracle, SAP on SQL. So these applications are also transforming. They are becoming in RAM. So the performance you are getting it from the memory, but at the same time, you still need to read okay, from the at boot, or when you restart, or when you let us say fail over, you still have to read from the storage. So you still need performance from the storage, SSDs. At the same time, if we look at the left, the introduction of microservices, okay, where the application is not anymore a monolithic application, a single package. It is being sliced between smaller packages, and each package is delivering certain function. So this will allow the developers to deliver a feature in a fast way. Instead of re-architecting the whole package, he will take a single module, update that module with new features the customer is asking for. So these are based on Kubernetes, based on Docker, okay, Rancher, for example. Kubernetes is an orchestrator. So those require a combination of SSD and object storage. Okay, so it's very important, and also require dynamic provisioning and consistency on the container level. So if I want to summarize what is, for those who doesn't know exactly what is Docker or what is containers, okay, so this is similar to VMware or Hyper-V virtualizing the host, or the server is virtualizing the server into multiple virtual machine. Containers is virtualizing the operating system, okay, and this will be the operating system of the cloud, okay, this is the enabler of the multi-cloud solution. Now, if we look at our all-flash system, okay, and our fast system, these are, in brief, this is the portfolio, mainly the portfolio. So we introduced a newly system which is AFF A2550, and this is an all-flash system entry model with less than 1 millisecond latency. So when we talk about NVMe, full NVMe, the one you see highlighted in orange, so these are mainly end-to-end NVMe. This means also the back-end shelf are not SAS. Okay, these are NVMe shelves. Okay, and here not all the storage. So some other vendors, they call that they have NVMe storage, but you have to see if the back-end shelf also supporting this, and it's not a bottleneck. And also our AFF A400 and A800, these are end-to-end NVMe system. Our fast system is mainly hybrid. So you can mix and match SSD with nearline SAS for capacity. You can use it to tier some data from the all-flash system through Fabric Pool. So you can tier the data that is old or archived, or that data that is static, or the data that is like snapshots for protection. So you can move it to another low-cost, okay, system, which is our fast system that can be on the main or the DR side. And at the moment, these are the features of ONTAP. So we introduced recently the S3 support of S3 in production. So it can act as like an object storage target. Okay, not to replace the storage grid solution, which is actually makes sense for data that is more than 300 terabyte. Okay, so because of the it will be more cost effective. So S3 introduction on our storage is mainly for the edge. So this is the direction. So if you see, you will get to hear more about IoTs, for example, or edge computing. So you will find like solutions like sensors sitting at a factory, at a shop, and those are having certain application which is running on a small hyperconverged infrastructure, and those application write natively to S3. Okay, so you don't need to write to NFS then translate this to S3. So here you will benefit from this feature on the ONTAP system. Now, other protocol are supported, I believe you are familiar with, for file sharing, for iSCSI block, for fiber channel. Also the automation. So we have too many playbooks, okay, for mainly to automate our storage through Ansible. If you go to Ansible, you can download those playbooks, okay, around 140 or 150 playbooks, which will allow you to automate and integrate with the self-service. So if customer want to have a service portal where his user or developers or line of business want to order something, provision something, they don't need to go to the storage admin for that. They can consume those services, and in the back end, Ansible will apply all these automation on our storage devices or storage arrays. Also a Trident or Project Astra. So Trident is mainly about dynamic provisioning, okay, of the storage for the containers. So for normal traditional LAN, you are managing, for example, 10 LAN, 150 LAN. When it comes to containers, you will end up with thousands, okay, thousands of volumes, persistent volume, okay, so you will find thousands of these. So you need some tools that will allow you to manage these through policies, and this is mainly Trident, okay. Project Astra is mainly about how to replicate or how to protect, okay, in a consistent way, your microservice application running on containers. So this is in brief about our Project Astra, which is at the moment at beta level, and there is a plan to bring it to production, okay. So other feature of NetApp is mainly about the security itself, the multi-tenancy. We have an SVM where you can dedicate an SVM, which is a chunk of your storage that can be dedicated to tenant 1 and an SVM 2 to tenant 2. And you can attach certain specific module so that you can isolate also on the input-output module or the NIC card of the storage. Also our fabric pool, which allow us to tier. And this is mainly for data protection. You can tier to another ONTAP with S3 enabled, or you can tier to a storage grid, which is object storage from NetApp, or you can tier to the cloud. Also, Active IQ will allow us to have some security, so it will highlight some security deviation from a global best practice of NetApp. So based on AI analytics, it will analyze the system and it will provide remediation in order to have a secure environment. Okay. Also, our snapshot for protection, which is very famous from NetApp, okay, where you can use a snapshot for disaster recovery or for backup, okay, of your production. And Snap Center can, it's a tool from NetApp that will allow you to manage all these snapshots in a consistent way between different applications like Oracle, SQL. So it has modules that it is supporting all these applications, and the data protection will be in a consistent way. Now, to go to the feature of the efficiency, and this is mainly our inline deduplication, compression, okay, and also our flex groups, which is you can cluster, you can scale out and scale up in our fast system. So you can add more controller or you can add more disk shelf, okay. So it gives you both flexibility, and at the same time we can extend this to our to other public cloud services through Cloud Volume ONTAP, Cloud Volume Services, Azure NetApp File, okay, and other cloud other offering from NetApp, mainly about business continuity, okay, mainly about our cloud manager. So it's fully integrated with major public cloud provider. Now, E-Series is our second storage array, and it's mainly for these use cases. Okay, so high performance computing, analytics. If you are having Hadoop, for example, or Splunk, okay, and you want to apply analytics, okay, like big data. Also, at the same time, it is very good for backup target device. So if you are using Commvault, for example, and you are relying on the software to do the deduplication compression, and you want a cost-effective target device, this is our E-Series. And also for video surveillance, we have lots of certification with Genetec, with Milestone, okay, and with Bosch. So these are the major video surveillance provider, and we have reference architecture for that. So this is our E-Series in brief, with the lowest entry model to 812 to the highest one. Now, the second step in going to the cloud is mainly about building at speed. And when I talk about building at speed, this is our hyper converged infrastructure. The use case, so the hyper-converged infrastructure started with a single use case, and it was at that time VDI, and this is our topic for today. So, but these days, hyper-converged infrastructure is like a private cloud, okay, for you, and at the customer side. So, like on-prem, it's like it can act as a private cloud because of the fast deployment that will allow you. You can deploy in a fast way through our NDE tool. And at the same time, you can manage this, the life cycle of that system through a single console. And it is based on a software-defined storage. Okay, and you can top up this, so it will allow you, there is no vendor lock-in here. So you can use, for example, vRealize as a self-service portal. Then you end up with automation or a cloud concept, private cloud concept. You can use OpenStack on top of it. Okay, and you will end up with a self-service portal, which is also a private cloud that can also integrate with a public cloud provider. So, and Active IQ is mainly to manage this. Now, Our HCI provides us flexibility, okay, because we have we have independent compute from storage, and this allows us to scale more, especially on the storage side, okay, and will allow us to integrate with different hypervisor. So we are not pushing for a certain hypervisor more than the other, okay. So the solution is flexible from this perspective. Now, these are the major use cases. VDI, which is our topic for today, with GPUs and with all these features, and our enterprise application and also private cloud as a use case. Now, FlexPod, this is our converged infrastructure, and this is our alliance or partnership with Cisco, where we have the best from server perspective, which is Cisco UCS server, Cisco Nexus switches, which are also leader, and our NetApp leader in the Gartner, okay, which is flash system AFF. So here it will provide you the flexibility to choose the combination between these. Okay, so you can choose any on-tap system, okay, and also any UCS model. Okay, so also it has certain like reference architecture for artificial intelligence, for VDI, and you have an entry model, FlexPod Express, and also you have a larger one, okay, and it can scale a lot. Now, the moving toward a hybrid cloud. So here we are talking about our on-tap system, where you can have a cloud volume on tap running in the cloud, and you as a partner, you can manage that cloud volume on tap, same like you are adding labor or you are adding managed service on top of it. So it can be used as a disaster recovery. It can be used to have it as a production in the cloud itself. And at the same time, with the efficiency features that are available with ONTAP and the support also for S3, you can use it as a target, okay, for your application. At the same time, it will allow you, it will, for example, if you purchase from Azure a 10 terabyte volume, because of the efficiency features, this will translate to 30 terabyte because of the duplication, compaction, all of these. So as if you are paying 1/3 in this scenario. And at the same time, our storage grid, which is our object storage, which can be which have two tiers. One which is flash object storage, which is mainly for the cloud native applications that write directly to S3. So these are production and they need performance from the object storage, or if they are running certain analytics, real-time analytics on the object storage. And at the same time, it will also provide the use case for archiving, okay, or data archiving, and mainly, for example, dumping static data, archive of databases, backup, okay, long-term retention. So these are mainly the use case of our storage grid. With it is fully integrated also. So, for example, with certain like we have too many use cases like Splunk, okay, like Elasticsearch. Now, this is a portfolio of our storage grid, okay, which is the SGF6024 is mainly an all-flash system, and the rest are nearline SaaS. You have the also the load balancer. You can bring a third party, or you can use our load balancer. And very, I believe, in the near future, we'll be having a smaller load balancer to have a more cost-effective solution. So the only difference between S3 on tap and storage grid on tap is that we are putting like a limit on the S3 to be 300 terabyte. Okay, more than that, we will be using that limit is not technical. It's mainly more because at that limit, our storage grid will be more cost effective. Okay, and this can scale to hundreds of petabytes. Now, when it comes to our container management solution, so Trident is based on the CSI, which is a well-known standard, okay, for containers, and it will add too many advanced features on top of this CSI, and mainly about the automation, self-provisioning, okay, the for persistent storage, okay, and persistent storage is mainly for stateful application, because stateless applications, they don't have any data, so you can rebuild it easily through a YAML file. And our project Astra here is mainly about protecting or replicating, for example, from cluster A to cluster B, from cluster A in Azure to cluster B in AWS. Okay, so and all of this through a unified data protection tool and achieving consistency of the application. because if you, when it comes to containers, if you just replicate, you may not be able to restore because of the consistency problem. Now, these are the NetApp cloud services that we can consume. So if you see, for example, the our Spot, which is a series of tools that is also beneficial for our virtual desktop environment. So Spot is like a broker. So you know, in cloud services, you have a reserved instance and you have on-demand hourly based. So reserved instance, like you buy them for, like purchase them for 3 years upfront, and on-demand is hourly based, okay, which is more costly than the reserved one. And the Spot is mainly the buffer that the cloud provider include in their solution. So, for example, Azure have 20% buffer or 30%, and these are not being used at the moment. So they will provide certain offer on these instances or resources. So here, our solution will allow us to leverage those Spot instances, which are low cost, but at the same time providing certain guarantees over the SLAs. Okay, so it will automate the process of purchasing those and using those virtual machines or resources. Okay, it's currently on the compute and it will be extended to the storage also. And other services like our Cloud Volume on Tap, Azure NetApp File, it's mainly like a file share, but the high performance file share. This can be used also for our VDI for mainly the policies and the file share of the user, profile policies and file shares. Also, the Cloud Control, which is Cloud Manager, it's very nice software. It's mainly about, it started with managing our cloud volume on top in the cloud, and then we started adding too many features, which you see on the right, like Cloud Sync, which is mainly for migration, Cloud Compliance, which is mainly for compliance like GDPR, deviation from those compliance. You can search for certain, let us say, credit card of certain user, okay, and Cloud Tiering, which is mainly similar to Fabric Pool, where you are able to tier from one storage, one cloud to the other, or one storage to the other. SaaS backup, which is mainly for Office 365, and Global File Cache, which is my colleague. He will talk about it in detail. Now, to end up with a portfolio, and here we are talking about our governance, okay, solution. So from governance perspective, we have Active IQ, which is an enhanced version of auto support, if you are familiar with auto support, and which added the analytics and added the different user interface access, mobile, laptop, through portal. At the same time, the customer can like monitor, and you as a partner, you can monitor the existing storage at all these customers, and at the same time, it will leverage the analytics from a data lake, global data lake. So if a customer, for example, in US, he faced some bug issue, then we are able to avoid that bug, okay, on for a customer that is based in Dubai, okay, and there is some remediation here and proactive care. Also, our Active IQ Digital Advisor, it is like it will act as an advisor. Okay, it will allow you to edit the dashboard itself, add some cards, what is of interest for you, and at the same time provide insights about planning or when to upgrade, when to update the software itself of the storage system. So all of these details. Now, Active IQ Unified Manager is mainly for on-tap systems. So if you have multiple on-tap system, Cloud Volume on Tap, FAST, AFF, so you can manage from a single interface. You can automate that. It has some service level objective for provisioning. Also, you can consume the API. At the same time, advanced monitoring and reporting, okay, and troubleshooting. So all these features with Active IQ Unified Manager. Now, Cloud Insight is the tool that is being used for in our VDS, NetApp VDS or Virtual Desktop Service, in order to monitor and manage monitor and troubleshoot, okay, or optimize the resources. So it is supporting heterogeneous environment, not only NetApp, different storage vendor, different virtualization, up to the container level also. So you can see granularly up to the container level. And that's it from a portfolio perspective. Any question regarding the portfolio before I move to NetApp VDS?
Khalil, can you just specify more on the spot related thing? I didn't actually understand what is the requirement of that.
Okay, so Spot itself, you have different utility in Spot. Okay, so Spot is the name of a virtual machine. Okay, that is buffer. So when you design a cloud, you don't design exactly what the customer want. For example, if I have 10 customers and they need 100 terabyte of storage, I don't give 100 terabyte. I give 130 terabyte because of the scale, right? So each hyperscalers, they have some buffer, okay, for the scale. Now that buffer is not being used by any customer. And for that, they are putting certain discounts on these resources, compute resources, storage resources. Okay? So what Spot is doing, it's like a brokerage. So if you tell someone to buy for me, to compare, for example, for me, like, how can I give you example? Like Trivago, for example, for hotels, okay? It will compare between different, okay, hotel, which one is lowest cost, okay? However, for this Spot, it will also buy for you, okay? So it may buy, for example, one Spot instance, which is for 2 months, okay? Another Spot instance for 3 months, okay? The third one is for 5 months. Then it will combine all of these, so to provide you as if these are a reserved instance. So instead of paying upfront for a reserved instance of 1 year, which is more costly, you are paying smaller chunks. Okay, so overall, from overall perspective, it will reduce the cost. You got my idea? This is one functionality. So it's mainly, it will optimize the workload. Also, it will analyze the workload. Okay, so it has too many features. If you want, we can arrange a session and dig deeper onto this topic itself.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, it's not only about the Spot instance. It has too many features here. The cloud analyzer is part of it, Echo and Ocean. So it's also target also the storage optimization at the same time.
Okay.
Any other question? Before I move to VDS?
No, I'm good. I'm good.
We are good to move forward. Yeah.
Okay, so our next topic is about VDS, NetApp VDS, which is virtual desktop service. It's mainly based on VDI. So just to give an idea, okay, I'm not sure if all of you are aware, we have 3 of the largest VDI implementations, okay, in the world for VDI, virtual desktop infrastructure. So what is VDS exactly? Okay. Now, if we take a look at the impact of COVID, okay, before 2018, majority of the virtual desktop environment were on-prem, okay, and majority of them are based on remote desktop session, which is a technology from Microsoft, okay, because VMware is a little bit higher from price perspective. Okay, so majority of them are relying on RDS, and I'm not sure if all of you are knows in deep about how RDS work. So RDS is mainly is about, you will have some Windows server. It can be Windows 2016 and recently, or 2019, or recently, for example, Windows 2007. That Windows server will allow multiple user. Okay, it can be a virtual machine, and it will allow multiple user to access different session. For example, like 20 session per host. Okay, so each user will grab one session, and that session will act as a virtual desktop for that user. Okay, so he's consuming the resource on that workstation, which is Windows 2016, 19, or Windows 7. So this way, we are somehow it is allowing us to have a cost-effective solution, okay, with the capability of a VDI solution. Now, in 2019, Azure had introduced WVD, which is Windows Virtual Desktop. It's based on RDS, actually, and it's a control plane. And just to explain what is control plane, or what is managed from and managed to. So when you build an environment, okay, you have to have, okay, first, manage from is where your tools, okay, you have to have management tools, monitoring tools, right? So those tools will be installed, okay, on a platform. It is named manage from, okay, or control plane. Now, those tools are creating certain resources, okay? So we are creating, for example, a virtual machine. So that virtual machine can be on a target destination. That target destination is called manage to, okay, not manage from, okay? So for example, I have my manage from running on-prem, and my manage to, I'm creating virtual machine in the remote side or at the public cloud, okay? So this is in brief about control plane and manage from, manage to. Now, so Azure introduced Azure in 2019 introduced the WVD, which was also they introduced also the Windows 7 to act as a workstation for remote desktop session. Okay, so it gave more improvement, okay, or better cost, okay, from cost perspective than a VDI on-prem because of the purchase and all of these procurement of VDI on-prem. So normally, public cloud is less expensive when it comes to VDI, not for all application, but only for VDI is less expensive if you use or leverage the public cloud. However, there is one point here. You don't want to end up with having virtual desktop away from the application. So the virtual desktop should be near to the application. So a user it doesn't have to go to a virtual desktop, which is sitting in the cloud, and then in order to access an application that is sitting on-prem. So this will be a 2-round latency. You don't need this. Okay? So the design has to reflect this. At the same time, in 2020, because of COVID, majority of the companies moved to remote, same like us, for example. Now we are doing this event, instead of doing it live and seeing each other, we are doing it on our laptop, right? So because of this sudden change or this problem, okay, so we needed something which is very fast. Some companies, they didn't give their users laptops, okay? So they need to, if you want to go and procure a laptop, that will take lots of time. So they tell them, use your own laptop, personal laptop, and run a virtual desktop from our solution or from our data center. Now, what is the main problems with or issue with the on-premise solution? Okay, so first, the procurement. You have to procure a server, you have to procure the software, the licenses, okay? So this will take some time. The second point is the cost of this. So if you take the cost dollar per desktop per month, it will be higher, okay, if you want to design this on-prem. I'm not sure why I lost. Someone else has started sharing by mistake, maybe. Okay, so if you want to build that desktop as a service on-prem, 100% it will be higher, okay, from cost perspective from cloud, okay, cloud offering, because of the scale of cloud. Because on-prem you are buying, let us say 5, 10 server, 20 server. From cloud perspective, they buy 100,000 of servers upfront, okay, x86 server. So the scale is very important here, okay? And the productivity also. They have shared resources. On-prem, you have dedicated resources. So you have a person that is sitting there, okay, or you have a dedicated resources outsourced somewhere else in India, or it can be other country, okay? But for a major public cloud provider, they have shared concept where a single delivery team is managing multiple users, okay, multiple tenants. Now, also at the same time, okay, the lack of virtual desktop or VDI expertise. So it's not only about installing Citrix or VMware or RDS. It needs a lot of small tasks, okay, of integration between Active Directory, policies, all of these, storage. So it's not that easy, okay? It can be complex. Okay? At the same time, the end user experience, okay? So if you have applications that is sitting beside the user, VDI on-prem makes sense. If you have applications that is sitting in the public cloud or some another headquarter or in a different cloud provider, then you need to have you need your virtual desktop to be in the cloud. Now, through 2023, so 70% of the new desktop virtualization business will be based on business continuity. So why business continuity here? Because of the impact of COVID. So it will take some time, okay, because this is a major impact. Okay, it's related to how to resume the business. So some companies were impacted that their employees, they couldn't access their systems because of COVID. Because of access, they needed VPN, they needed a network to enhance their network, they needed the virtual desktop, okay, access. So all of these, this is we will see a lot about business continuity or virtual desktop. Now, what are the solutions from NetApp? We have two solutions from NetApp. One which is virtual desktop service and one which is desktop as a service. So what's the difference here? Virtual desktop service is actually a control plane, or it's actually how can I say, a management environment. Okay, it's not the target destination where you are provisioning your virtual desktop. So this is like a portal. It will allow the let us say company X. Okay, it will subscribe to this software as a service. So it will allow them to deploy in an easy way. Okay, their VDI, they can deploy it on-prem, they can deploy it in the cloud, AWS, Azure. Okay, you can have a combination of that. So it's a complete, okay, it's a control plane that will allow you to deploy in a easier way. Okay, at the same time, it will provide lots of services on top of that. And this is similar to the concept of, for example, open source technology. Okay. So if you look, for example, let us say take an example, OpenShift. So what Red Hat is doing, they have the Red Hat operating system, right? On top of that Red Hat, okay, it can be Red Hat, it can be Ubuntu, it can be any other operating system. They are adding, okay, the containers, which is Kubernetes, which is also open source. Okay, so they don't own it. Okay. Also, they are adding some feature on top of that, which are also open source, which are free. But the important point, they are adding their service. They are supporting that stack, and they are adding some new functionality around that stack and providing it as an offering. Okay, so the idea here of VDS is somehow similar to that concept. Okay, and at the same time, if you want to add labor or you want to manage the endpoints, okay, which is not available in virtual desktop service, where the customer or you as a partner can manage those, for example, 100 user Windows 7 desktops. Okay. Patching, configuration, provisioning. So, okay, then and fully managed, it is available there. Okay? It's end-to-end desktop as a service solution. But our topic today is mainly about the virtual desktop service, which is not the managed one. Okay? So, what is virtual desktop service? Okay? If you see below, you have the on-prem. It can be our HCI, because HCI is the best solution for VDI system. You don't want to build, you can do it on an AFF or a traditional storage, but hyper-converged infrastructure is best for VDI. Okay? And you can use also FlexPod if you have a huge, okay, implementation or a huge amount of users. So on top of that, you can have the VMware vSphere, which is a hypervisor, and RDS on top of VMware. This is a solution on-prem. In public cloud, you can have the same on AWS and Google Cloud. At the same time, on Azure, we have something called WVD. So NetApp VDS will also leverage WVD. Okay. So you will ask me now, what's the difference between a customer having or using WVD versus using NetApp VDS? WVD is mainly for Azure only. Okay. So if the customer is having all his application running in Azure, without on-prem application, without application in other cloud provider, and this is not the direction moving forward. Majority of customers, they have multi-cloud, okay, multi-cloud usage. So WVD will allow you to only manage Azure. Then you need another interface to manage for other virtual desktop sitting somewhere else near the application, because you will not have all these sitting in Azure. So you will not have your virtual desktop in Azure and your application somewhere else, okay, in AWS or GCP. You will pay a lot for that. It's not local traffic. So the point here is, if you want to have a unified, okay, control plane that is managing your on-prem virtual desktop and your WVD Azure and your AWS and Google Cloud Platform, RDS virtual desktop, this is NetApp Virtual Desktop Service. So it will allow you first to deploy. It will automate all these small tasks. So there is too many tasks, which is not about only provisioning a virtual desktop, okay? Related to policies, related to security, related to Active Directory integration, okay? So all of these, you will not see these are in the back end, okay? And I can share a document for that. Okay? So these are in the back end, these are being done by the offering itself. So the customer will see a very easy interface where it will allow him to provision and doesn't care about all these small details. At the same time, it will integrate with Active Directory, and at the same time, he can add user policies, edit those user and policies, okay, and add those credential as a key for those, so security keys. At the same time, the application management, he can add certain applications, okay, and he can update those applications. He can select which user is will have access to which application. Also, he can manage the images, okay, where you are provisioning RDS from certain images, for example, for sales business unit or for marketing business unit. Okay. And also, it will provide us to optimize the resources, okay, and I will go through this in the next slide. And all of this is done through a single portal, which is consumed as a software as a service. Okay? So it is only a subscription, and then the customer will be able to provision. He will point that, so you have multiple deployment. It can be on-prem on multiple cloud. So the user from that web portal, he can start provisioning virtual desktop and using those virtual desktop in a matter of hours instead of taking days to implement this solution. So these are some of the deployment automation. It will create for you the virtual networks, the subnetworks, and all the network policies, the storage. So here you can leverage our Azure NetApp file, for example, if you are using Azure, to use it as for the shares of that user. You can use it also to store the policies. You can use it also to store the application streaming of these users. At the same time, for the compute also, it will manage the role-based access. And all of this through an HTML interface, okay, and also the policies through the Active Directory integration. It will integrate between on-prem Active Directory and through AD Connect to the Azure Active Directory, okay, in order to have a seamless environment, virtual desktop environment. Now, the ease of management also. So here you can deploy in minutes, you can add user in seconds, you can scale out without limitation. You can upgrade your application, okay, and you can merge groups. So all of this is being done from a single interface, okay. So how NetApp VDS optimize, okay, the spend, the cloud spend. So there is a different feature. Live scaling is one of these features. So live scaling, what is doing, okay, is actually this is mainly. So you have, for example, number of session per host, okay? So you can specify some policy related to the session, okay, or some policy related to the host itself. So you can say, for example, this host will allow us to run only 10 sessions. When you reach to that level or that threshold of 10 sessions, you have to provision automatically a new host, okay? And that host can be, for example, Windows 2019, or it can be Windows 7. So it will automatically do that for you. And at the same time, if it decreases on certain limit, it will deprovision that host so that you will not be paying for the hyperscaler. Okay. Also, the workload scheduling. You can put a schedule. For example, if your user are accessing your virtual desktop from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. Okay. And only certain, like for example, operations engineers are accessing it after this time. So you can put schedule for when it is to boot, when this should be down, and at the same time it will run minimal session per host to avoid paying for extra cost. And the Wake on Demand feature is very nice feature where the user will log into a portal and he can select if his resource is turned off, okay, by the policy. He can select to turn it on and start using his virtual desktop, and you can apply policies on that to allow certain users to do that and to reject that request from for other user. Also, the integration with our Spot, okay, where it will allow us, for example, for RDS, you will have virtual machine running Windows 2019 or Windows 2007. So those can be running on a Spot instance. And if you want to have certain SLA of your virtual desktop, so if you are, for example, having SLAs of, let us say, gold or platinum for your user, so virtual device should not be down at all, you should have HA and all of these features, Spot can help on optimizing that cost of the hyperscaler, okay, when it comes to compute resources and storage resources. So here, if you look at the left side, this is the business driver, and then we have the technology layer and the business benefit. Okay, so which cloud should I use? Okay, so this solution will allow us to use different cloud provider. Okay, and so what is the impact of that? Okay, from business perspective, is the flexibility. Okay, and the mobility that you'll be having. So you can leverage, for example, Azure, because they have very nice artificial intelligence feature, for example, or analytics feature. You can, for example, use Google because they have, for example, text-to-speech service that you like most. So you will have certain applications sitting in Azure, other applications sitting somewhere else. So virtual desktop have to follow also. At the same time, so which storage platform fits best? Okay. So here we are talking about optimizing the OpEx because of the efficiencies, because of the automation that is there. At the same time, the data protection, okay, or the backup server to reduce the risk, okay, from the business perspective, and the compliance and security, because some of these industry may be healthcare, maybe telco, highly regulated industries. So also GDPR, which is European industry, to protect user. Okay, so user can tell you, I want to delete this file, not that file on the desktop and laptop. At the same time, the how will my global workforce access this data? So those virtual desktops, so here we are talking about the VDI, okay, and we are talking about the file cache, or the topics that GFC for NetApp, the topics that my colleague will present. And all of this should be monitored and analyzed. So again, our HCI can be the solution for our on-prem deployment. Okay, you can create a bundle of our HCI. On top of it, we can have our VMware hypervisor, or you can have Hyper-V, and running on top of it, you can have your RDS session, and you can control this through VDS. So this is our HCI, the flexibility in our HCI, where you can add compute node, multiple compute node, you can add storage node. Okay, so it gives you multiple flexibility from memory, CPU, capacity, and performance. Also, part of the VDS is you need volumes for those virtual desktop. Okay, so that volume can be coming from a Cloud Volume Service or Azure NetApp file. So Cloud Volume Service is mainly on AWS and Google Cloud, and Azure NetApp file is our Azure file sharing, which is built natively from the portal of Azure. Okay, and each one have certain characteristics, okay, which differentiate each one from each other. So Cloud Volume on top also will provide you, on top of NFS and CFS, which is available in the Cloud Volume Service, it will allow you to use iSCSI also, okay, to add volumes. Now, global file cache, okay, this will be covered now after this session, so I will not talk about it. Okay. And most important, the data protection for Office 365. So SaaS backup from NetApp will allow you to protect, okay, against a virus and ransomware. Okay, you can protect against some hacker or losing of data. So it will protect, for example, the email, the Microsoft Teams, OneDrive, okay, SharePoint. So all of these Microsoft offering, and will provide reporting for that. At the same time, you can monitor all of these virtual desktop from a single interface called Cloud Insight, where it will allow you to dig into resource level, it will allow you to troubleshoot, to analyze where is the problem, okay? And at the same time, it's supporting heterogeneous environment. So the choice that you choose, if you choose, for example, HCI not from NetApp, it will also allow you to monitor that. Okay, and it will give you the compliance, Okay, for example, GDPR compliance, you can search also for certain, let us say, credit card, you can search for certain user, you can search for certain document related to a certain user. So again, the same stack that I was talking about. So cloud provider A, B, or C, this is actually the offerings for NetApp VDS. It can be on-prem, it can be on Google or AWS or Azure. Also, from storage perspective, we have different options. Cloud Volume on tap is one of those options, Azure NetApp File or Cloud Volume Service. From backup perspective, this is our cloud backup, which is based on snapshot. It's very easy. It's a single step, okay, where it's mainly for files. So it will take snapshot of those files and it will store these based on certain retentions that you specify. SaaS backup is mainly for the collaboration tools, which is mainly Office 365, okay. Cloud compliance is mainly for the GDPR because you are dealing with users. So you have user data related to users, okay, entries. And at the same time, our VDS and global file cache and our cloud insight, which is acting as a management or governance layer. So this is the NetApp VDS or workplace, okay, stack. So this is an example. This is one of the customer who wanted to provision 150 user of Citrix on-prem. However, it was too complex because they needed to do some like PowerShell commands. Okay, so they needed some PowerShell experts. Okay? So they found us on Microsoft because we have we have a great partnership with Microsoft. And as WVD is fully integrated with VDS, okay? And we will see that in the next slide. Okay, so they were able to run to provision 150 user in a fast way without worrying about all these small details. Okay, there is too many small details in order to implement a successful without failure VDI solution. Okay, this is another example. So this is the high level, okay, architecture of our VDS. So if you see if you are familiar with virtual desktop environment, they consist of certain components. Those components will be first the web access, which is the portal HTML5 portal. Okay, from that portal you can configure your you can access, okay, and you can configure or you can access your virtual desktop. A gateway is actually handling the connection between the user and the workstation. For example, if you have a user that want to grab an RDS session, and that RDS session is running in your data center on a certain virtual machine, so user will talk to the gateway, it will connect to the gateway, then the gateway, it will pass that request to the virtual machine. It will connect it to the virtual machine, specific virtual machine where the session is residing. Now, the brokerage is doing the load balancing mainly for those connection between user and session. So it's making that load balancing and providing access in a pool way to the user. So it's connecting user A to session B, user C to session D. This is mainly the brokerage job. And also on top of that, you have the diagnostic. So any task that is being done on that system, on the VDI system, it will highlight if based on an event, if this is a failure or if this is a success. And you can consume all of this through REST API. So we can integrate, same like we did with VDS, okay? We can integrate based on API, and we can leverage that virtual desktop environment, which is one single deployment out of multiple deployment managed by a single software as a service control plane called VDS. So this is WVD, okay, which is the same concept but running in Azure. So VDS can manage different deployment, okay, WVD on-prem, RDS, in Google. So this is the concept, okay, behind the solution itself. And customer can manage the desktop from patching perspective, from configuration. Okay, so because this is not a fully managed solution. Fully managed is the other option that I mentioned in the beginning of this session. Okay. So here we are talking about VDS. This is where VDS play. This is fully integrated with Microsoft. Okay, RDS. It's not based on Citrix. It's not based on VMware. We can use VMware as a hypervisor for our on-prem, but not a VMware View or VMware Horizon. Okay, as part of VDS solution. And why we selected RDS? Because again, majority of the service provider. Okay, and I was also working at a service provider. And when we used to design a virtual desktop environment, we used to use RDS and not VMware because it's more expensive. And at the end, the VDI solution, the customer will go for a VDI solution for major reason. The first reason is he will say, okay, I'm paying for a refresh of my laptop every 3 years. Okay, so hardware refresh of the laptop is for 3 years for each user. So it's costing me, for example, 5,000 dirham. At the same time, to manage it, I'm adding labor and I'm paying, for example, 2,000 dirham for these 3 years. Okay, so it's an exercise. Okay, where how much those capex, okay, how much those capex, the software, the hardware, the laptop, the software that is installed, the labor. So the customer will get the overall cost, how much he's paying. He will compare with the dollar per desktop per month, and he will multiply by 36 months, and he will compare, okay, which one is more cost effective. This is one reason. The second reason is mainly related to the security and related to the mobility. So mobility or business continuity is related more to, it increased a lot because of COVID. Okay, and security is mainly because customer is not sitting in the data center. Okay, so the employee, for example, I'm working at home. Okay, now how NetApp knows that I'm not misusing, okay, my the data. Okay, so virtual desktop can guarantee that you will not be able to misuse the data or to move the data to somewhere else. Okay, so it has multiple security features. So these are the major, okay, drivers that will make the customer go for a virtual desktop solution. And so to finish with our, it's a software as a service, NetApp VDS. It will allow you to manage multiple deployment, okay? So you can deploy in on-prem and multiple cloud, and it can orchestrate and it provides certain services. Okay, there is too many services from NetApp, okay, where you can leverage on top of that offering. Any question and answers? Sorry, any questions? Before I pass this to my colleague for GFC or for caching.
There are no questions yet on the chat box as well. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask. You can drop it on the chat box as well. So nothing so far, Chris.
Thank you.
There's one question for I think maybe on partner behalf. How they can sell this to their customer? How is it possible for them to sell this?
Okay, so
what the ways?
Yeah, so the best way to sell it is to arrange for a demo, okay, or lab access. Okay, so you can we can provide the customer with an access, okay, free for. I will share those details. It is, I believe, for certain, like maybe 30 days or so, or a little bit more than 14 days or 30 days. So the customer can provision, can see how much it is easy, okay, to deploy virtual desktop environment from scratch. And this is the best way to sell the solution. And at the same time, same like what I explained. So the customer having different applications sitting in different location, multi-cloud location. This is a direction, and you will see a lots of applications being developed in different cloud environment. Because first, they don't want to have a cloud lock-in, for example, or our application sitting in only Azure. They don't want that. Okay? So this is majority of the customers. This is the direction. So virtual desktop have to reside beside those applications. And to manage all of these virtual desktop, you don't want to end up with 3 portal, different portal to manage. That is too complex. Okay, and 3 integration, right? So you need a single control plane, software as a service. Okay, there is no capex investment that it will allow them to easily provision, deploy, manage, operate, and troubleshoot and monitor. So this is in brief about the value of that VDS, NetApp VDS.
Right. Thanks, Chris, for your time. I think great update for us.
Welcome.
Hopefully our partner will utilize. So if there is any requirement, please feel free to engage us and Chris for further assistance for you. Thanks again, Chris, for joining us with and sharing your precious presentation. Over to Lee. Thank you, Lee, and we're looking forward for your presentation.
Thank you, and thank you very much for the invitation to actually speak to you all today. I hope we have a very interactive session, and I hope you guys enjoy it. So let's get started, because I know we are a little bit over time, so I just want to make sure we get through this as quick as possible. So my name's Lee Nicholson. I'm part of the Modern Workplace team, and we're here today to talk about the global file cache specifically, where I'm going to actually go through the reasons why you would want to modernize your distributed file services, what is global file cache, go over the solution, talk about the pricing, all of that kind of stuff, and then actually go into a technical overview demo for you guys as well, so that you can actually see how this technology actually builds out and how it's integrated into Cloud Manager and things like that. And what does the user experience look like? And then what isn't on here for the agenda is also where we should be targeting customers to make sure we can enable these services and things like that. And I will cover that with you guys today as well. So very quickly, reasons to modernize your distributed storage. Well, we find that, when we're talking to potential customers or existing customers, 80% of their data is typically unstructured data. And what they're finding is a problem is how they're managing all of this data at the moment, because it's all on file servers, it's sitting all over the place, and it has a major impact to IT because they're managing these islands of data. They have to keep re-provisioning resources in distributed branch offices. They have to, keep making sure that they have RTOs and RPOs and SLAs in place to actually back up this data and make sure they can recover the data, potentially, try and recover from ransomware and all of those kind of things. So there's a very real impact to IT, that we're trying to solve. Then the other side of it is actually the business impact and the way the business is impacted through the productivity loss that they have. And that's because, you have your users working on different versions of files, you have conflicting file versions, you have, data loss, you have people overwriting other people's data, and, the business really can't collaborate effectively. And this seriously impacts project deadlines and, SLAs and all sorts of things to their customers at the end of the day. So these are the two major reasons why you would want to modernize your distributed storage. But if we take a little bit deeper look into what is it, global file cache is trying to solve. Well, if you look at the user's problem, if you go and centralize your data today into a data center or into the public cloud for either AWS, Azure, or GCP, you're introducing a fundamental issue, and that fundamental issue is distance. And distance will always equate to latency. The further you are away from the data, the more latency you're going to have, the more disruption you're going to have, because now you're going further to get data that used to be local. And users typically complain about performance, things don't work, all of those kind of things. So this is the very real problem of what we're trying to solve with global file cache. So if we look at global file cache, we are actually built on Windows, so we're for Microsoft enterprises. We allow you to centrally consolidate all your remote branch office data into a single set of data, and then provide this intelligent file caching, which will provide the active data set to your customer. And typically we find that active data set is only around 10%. So, it's really important that you can actually have real-time, highly performant access to this data locally when you need it. And that's exactly what we're providing. But we can also coexist with additional Microsoft roles and features. So we can actually, be integrated with DNS or DHCP or SCCM distribution points and all sorts of other things. So you can really come up with this utility server model or office in a box kind of deployments by using GFC. And there are three primary use cases that we typically focus on when it comes to GFC or global file cache. And that is distributed file server consolidation. This is what we're there to do. It allows you to take all that data from all the remote branch offices sitting on Windows file servers or NAS filers or, all different types of storage platforms, and really centralize that and consolidate it onto, your NetApp real estate in the data center or in the cloud. That's the first use case. The second use case is around the global VDI deployment, which was alluded to a little bit earlier in the presentations. But essentially what we're doing is we're finding with the whole situation in the world at the moment that a lot more customers are moving to a regional VDI deployment, which is great because then the users have that high performance user experience. If a user's in the US, he's accessing VDI in the US, but he's the users in Europe or accessing Western Europe and all of those kind of things. But there's still a gap there because the users need to also access their data. And typically what would happen is you would deploy the data in a centralized data center, which would be, say, for instance, Western Europe again, just as an example, because I'm in Western Europe, so that's why I like to use it. But essentially what happens then is the users have a high performance VDI or Windows Virtual Desktop environment. That's all working really well, but now they have to go from the US all the way to Western Europe to go and fetch their data, and you introducing the latency and the distance again, which then disrupts the way that they work. So what we can do is we can also deploy the edge caches in regional VDI deployments, thus providing a high performant user experience from VDS, as well as a high performance user experience to the file data and the access to that data through global file cache. And then the final one, which is a big sweet spot for us, and this is where we've had a lot of great success over the last 10 years, and that is large file collaboration. And this is all around complex applications like Adobe InDesign or Creative Suite, Autodesk, AutoCAD, Revit, Bentley MicroStation, and a whole bunch of server utilities out there for engineering applications and things like that. And that's really around the large file collaboration, and that's where we find we have a lot of success. So what is global file cache and how does this all come together? So global file cache allows you to centralize and consolidate that data, thus enabling collaboration because of the centralization. But essentially what you would do is you would, your customer and yourselves, you would make a decision around, do we want to centralize and consolidate our data on-prem on a NetApp FAS or all-flash array or something like that. Or you could say, well, we want to start moving to the cloud. So, we want to start, centralizing all our data in the cloud. They might be on that journey already with some of the applications that they use, like SAP and things like that, where they could be running it on ANF or Azure NetApp files. So these are the kind of workloads that we would typically be looking at for unstructured data. And what we would do is we'd deploy a core instance in the data center very close to that data. And the core is responsible for mounting the corporate file shares from that centralized data set and providing it to your distributed branch office locations. And the core is merely a traffic cop. It is the communication mechanism between the remote branch offices and the backend file services at the end of the day. And what's really important to note is that you also have an edge instance as well, which sits in your remote branch office. And that's where we provide this intelligent file cache, where users can access data and they still get that local-like server experience for their file services. But what's important to note about this again is that it is a Windows-based software solution that you install on top of Windows Server 2016 or 2019. We are storage agnostic in the sense of it can be any SMB file share on-prem or in the cloud from the NetApp provided services. We also provide end-to-end security when it comes to, the way the data is being transferred from the remote branch office to the backend file services and all of that. And you can really lock down the data and make sure that it's secure in the branch office as well as in the centralized data set. But more importantly, on top of all of that, we can also provide cost savings because now you're doing all the centralization and consolidation onto one platform in the data center while providing this utility server model in the branch office, your edge is only a subset of the data. So you don't need to back up that server. You don't even need to worry about the data that resides there, because it is always only a local copy of the golden copy of the data that is sitting in the data center. So this drastically reduces the overall storage costs in the branch office as well. And we're transparent in the sense that we fully integrate into your Windows ecosystem. We can install on top of an existing Windows server in the branch offices today, and you can start utilizing the cache to get access to a centralized data set. But we can also transparently integrate into your DFS namespaces and things like that to make sure that you have this consistent user experience no matter where you're sitting in the world. And we're highly performant in the way we do this as well. So it's not just about the transferring of the data and everything, but we do compression and streaming over the wide area network. We also do something called delta differencing of data. So if a file is changed from one location and saved into the data center, when we come from another location and we try and access that data, we will only send the delta differences over the wide area network, thus reducing your overall costs and WAN utilization as well. And we're highly performant in the way we do it. But there's another component to our technology as well, and that's what we call the zero touch. And the zero touch always keeps the active data set close to the users. And the way we do this is we have, an NTF volume, which is the D drive, and that will organically grow as users access data on demand. And it allows us to actually present petabytes of storage to small, medium, and large scale offices. So you can really see all the data that is out there in the data center, and you can actively just go and cache the data that you need in your local cache instance in that sense. And what happens is when this cache actually grows organically over time and it gets to 80% of utilization, that's not a problem. Our zero-touch automated purge process will actually kick in and clean up schedule a job to go and clean out the cache, and it'll clean up anything between 20 and 50% of your data. Sorry, give me a second. I just want to have some water. Thanks, guys. Sorry about that. So yes, so that's the low watermark, and then we also get what's called the high watermark. And if we get to the high watermark, that is when the data gets to 95% of utilization. We will immediately kick in a purge, and we will go clean up between 25 and 50% of the data as well. So it's really important to understand that, once you've deployed GFC within the customer's environment, typically it's deployed, you set it, forget it, and just carry on, and everything just carries on working itself, and it maintains itself and everything. So let's get into a bit of a demo scenario for you guys.
Quickly, a question. Could you
Yes.
go back to 2 slides? The previous one? Yeah, the previous one.
That one.
The previous one where we had core and edge.
Yep.
Yeah, here. So this is like geographically dispersed locations. What if customer is having one data center here and they're, let's say, doing on-premises file share, and due to the COVID issue now, I think so many users might be working from home.
Yes.
Do we have any solution for those individual users, not for the geographically dispersed data centers, for those individual users to enhance this file sharing experience? Do we have any solution with the GFC?
So that's a very good question, and this is where VDS is coming into its own within the product suite of the cloud team from NetApp. So a lot of people are working from home. What we've seen is a lot of customers are now deploying cores on-prem in their data center. Sorry about that. And then what they're doing is they're actually deploying a VDR farm in the cloud, and they put in a cache in the cloud. And users are then be able to use their VDR sessions from home into a secure location in the cloud and access the data that's stored on-prem. So that's a very real situation. Then there's another part to that. You asked, what if you have multiple data centers? Not an issue. Like it's depicted in this diagram here, you could have an on-prem data center and you could have some cloud-enabled data center as well. Not an issue. You can just go and deploy a core in both locations, and then you can have the edge communicating with one or multiple cores. So you can really give users the flexibility of working with data that's on-prem or in the cloud. And that's really important for things like GDPR or data sovereignty. If a customer, say, for instance, has a specific set of data that they have to keep on-premise, they can't put it in the cloud. Not an issue. You can actually do that. So did that answer your question?
Yes, yes, yeah.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so and I will go back into what a reference architecture looks like and all of that kind of stuff as well. And I will go through that in the demo as well, so you guys can see it. But let's get into the demo. So the demo is trying to solve the whole latency and distance issue. And what we've got in this demo scenario is we actually have a data center deployed in Azure in East US, which is in Virginia. Okay. Now, if you look at that, that is very far away from where we have two remote branch offices. We've got one in San Francisco in the US, and then we've got another one sitting in the Netherlands, in Amsterdam. And you can see that the latency from San Francisco to Virginia is roughly 86 milliseconds, and from Amsterdam, it's roughly 104 milliseconds. So you can really see how that's going to impact users' experience when it comes to normal SMB file data because of the chattiness of the protocol and everything. So if we look at that whole scenario and we look at how long it takes to open files and save files and, you know, do different things within the technology, if we had to go and do this natively over the WAN from Amsterdam, say, for instance, or from San Francisco, these will give you some random average performance results. But you can see that opening a Word took roughly 20 seconds on average. To open an Excel document, it was taking roughly 36 seconds to open a document, and to save PowerPoint presentations, it was taking roughly 37 seconds to save a document. And these aren't very large files, guys. These you're talking about 5 to 10 to 50 meg files. So these really aren't large files that the users are working with. And you can see if they every time they have to hit save, it's taking 37 seconds to save the file. They're losing a lot of their productivity due to that. So in the demo, and I'm going to jump ahead, what we're essentially going to do is we're going to actually go and deploy a instance of GFC in the cloud, close to Cloud Volumes on Tap, through an automation enablement that we've actually created. And I'm just going to skip ahead a little bit here. But what we've done is one of the first things we did when NetApp acquired Talon, which is now the GFC product, is we did Cloud Manager integration. And with the Cloud Manager integration, we can go auto provision the GFC management server, which does your licensing entitlements. It does your policy management for pre-population of data and a couple of other things as well. But essentially what happens is that all happens automated from Cloud Manager now. And then what we'll do is we'll get into the edge instances and all of that kind of stuff and how that all looks as well. Okay. I'm going to skip ahead because I'm pretty sure you guys have seen Cloud Volumes on Tap deployed before. I'm very cognizant that we are pretty much on time already. So I'm going to try and finish this as rapidly as possible now. Let me just get forward a little bit more. Sorry. Yeah, go to about there. Let me just press play from there. So basically what we did in Cloud Manager is we've actually gone and provisioned a Cloud Volumes on Tap HA pair, and we now want to go and enable GFC. And what you can do is you can literally just click on the Cloud Volumes on Tap instance in Cloud Manager. You can click on the Enable GFC. It will actually go through some of the prerequisites with you. So it'll say, this is what we're trying to do. It'll tell you, these are the prerequisites, so you need to make sure that these ports are open between the edge and the core, so your remote branch office and the centralized data set. It needs to make sure that it can actually get the subscription from the subscription table. It will also talk about the service account that you need on the domain so that you can actually have this deployed seamlessly and integrated into your system. And then it will also talk about some of the AV exclusions that need to be put in place for the caching technology to work effectively and be highly performant. But once you've got all of that in place, you can then go define the number of edges that need to be deployed. I think for the purpose of this demo, I'm just going to change it to 10 again, just so you guys can see it as it would look from a normal deployment perspective. And what we do now is we need to give it some credentials for the actual management server, first of all, because we do need to have the management server so that we get our entitlements of our licenses. And what we're literally doing now is we're just deploying that VM in the cloud. And it takes roughly 10 to 15 minutes to deploy this. Just skipping ahead a little bit again, just in being cognizant of time. So you can see it successfully deployed it. Now you can click on continue. The next part it's going to ask you is for domain credentials to make sure that you can actually join the core to the domain, as well as the service account that needs to be utilized for the caching technology. Why the service account is really important is because it interacts with the backend file system on behalf of the users. So it's really important that we have the service account, and this will actually be put into the backup operators group of CBO or any other storage platform that you do utilize for the technology. You need to make sure that it's part of the backup operators. And you can see now we're going to go and deploy the GFC core, and it's busy deploying it. Again, this takes about 10-15 minutes. What is nice about doing it this way as well now through Cloud Manager is you also get the centralized dashboard where you can actually see that your server running, what your CPU utilization looks like, making sure that all the traffic is working correctly, and so on and so forth through the core as well. And you can also see what the inbound and outbound network throughput look like. You also then get a link to go and do the deployment of the edges. And I'm going to skip ahead a little bit here just to save time. So when you click on that link, it'll actually take you to a link on a website where you can then just download the software. And once you've downloaded the software, or you've downloaded the OVA or VHDX template, you can then just go and configure the edge. And there is a whole process on how to do that. Oh, sorry about that. Okay, so now that we have that all done, we're now going to do the edge deployments just so you guys can see what that looks like. But essentially what happens is if you have a file share on the back end, we create a virtual file share of that same data represented in the cache, which you can see here, which can be rather long. And people very often ask me, well, Lee, isn't there a way to streamline that? And yes, there is. You can actually integrate it with DFS namespace. And then you are literally just going to your corp.local/global data, and you accessing the data on the edge if you're in San Francisco, or you accessing the data in the Amsterdam edge if you are sitting in Amsterdam. And that's all configured through DFS namespace. But to show you what this looks like, because I am really out of time here, and I want to try and just show you what it looks like and then go through the use cases very quickly. But essentially, if you look at this, I've mapped the drive to the San Francisco edge right now. And I'm trying to open a file, and you can see there's gray X's on the file. That means the file's available, but it hasn't been cached locally yet. So essentially what I'm doing here as a San Francisco user is I'm actually opening that file. So I'm caching that file locally. I've compressed and streamed it into my edge. I'm now going to make some changes and modifications that I need to, just to make sure, that everything's working and, I can do all the things I would normally do with a file. And once a couple of changes have been made, obviously we'll just save the file, make sure that all those changes have been saved. And now essentially what we're doing with the cache is we're compressing and streaming only those changes over the wide area network. And you'll see if I do a quick refresh on the Windows Explorer session, you can see that gray X has disappeared. So that file is now available locally. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump across to an Amsterdam PC where, a Amsterdam user now wants to go and access the same data as well. So again, you need to go to the local edge, or you could do it through DFS namespace, as we previously mentioned. And I'm going into that virtual file share again, and I'm going into my Fabric ID, and then I'm going into the backend file services and my share and the folder where I have the data. And again, just for consistency, what we can do is we can just map the drive for this data, but you can see that we're now working in Amsterdam. Okay. So now remember, I left that file open in San Francisco, and I'm going to try and access the same file at the same time from Amsterdam using a different user. And what should happen is we should get a pop-up saying that this file is already locked for use. Would I like a read-only copy? Would I like to be notified when I can make changes to the file? Or do I want to make another copy of the file? And what I'll do is I'll say, just notify me when it becomes available again. But essentially what it's done now is it's cached a local copy of the file in the edge in Amsterdam. So now I'm going to jump back to San Francisco very quickly, close down that session, and I'm going to go back to my Amsterdam PC, and I should get a pop-up saying this file is ready for writing. And I can say, yes, I want a read-write copy, and it's going to just refresh it to make sure I've got the latest and greatest data. And there we go. I can start working on the file. So what does that equate to? You know, if we look at that, you know, from a user perspective. Now, we spoke about the 30 seconds and the 36 seconds and the 37 seconds. If we look at it now, on average, when you're using GFC, it's now only taking 2 seconds to open Word documents on average, 5 seconds to open Excel, and only 3 seconds to save PowerPoint presentations. So you can see how this creates that high-performant user experience that we were talking about. So very last thing, some of the key qualifiers and how to target opportunities and things like that. I'm not going to go over the personas, you guys can see that, but I'm just going to talk about the profiles pretty quickly. So what we typically say we should be pursuing aggressively is 10 or more distributed locations where there are file servers in each location that they want to centralize and consolidate the data. They could be using Office 365 or Adobe Client applications or any large scale project file collaboration items like media or, you know, CAD or design or project files and things like that. So that is where we should be pursuing it aggressively. Where we have possible opportunities is, you know, 3 to 10 distributed file locations where they still want to centralize and consolidate data in the cloud, or it could be that they want to do a distributed VDI farm where they have regional VDI deployments, which we've already spoken about before. The kind of opportunities we don't typically go and pursue at all is things where there's a single site location, you know, mostly web-based applications, and you know, if people are working from home all the time and they don't have VDI and, you know, they don't want to, you know, utilize file caching with a Windows server. So that's the ones we should pass up immediately. So some of the key takeaways, it's always about establishing a single set of data. It's about real-time collaboration. We streamline and optimize the distributed storage infrastructure, and we've built for Microsoft enterprises. Any questions? Okay, no questions.
Yeah.
So if you guys want, and I would highly recommend it, you can go and look at cloud.netapp.com for more information around global file cache as well. But you should also have access to Lab on Demand, so labondemand.netapp.com. There is a GFC lab now available for partners in Lab on Demand, so you can actually go and deploy it. There is a run book on how to actually deploy the software from the core to the edge to all of that, and actually manipulate the data in the cache itself as well. So that would be a great starting point as well.
Lee, Subin here.
Yes.
How's the sizing done for GFC?
Sizing?
Or the licensing?
Oh, the licensing. Sorry, I didn't cover that. My apologies. So it's actually very straightforward. As of the 1st of September, it is a flat price of $3,000 per edge per annum. So if you have a 10-site opportunity, it would typically cost the customer $30,000 per annum. Very straightforward.
And how do we quote it to customers now?
So that is a very good question. It is a limited product at the moment. So if you need any quoting, you can actually email myself, and I will get my sales partner involved, who is Vipin Power, and he does all the quoting for GFC today.
Okay, sure. Thank you.
So when you said edge, so what about the core license? Does it cover it as well, or how is it?
So you don't get charged for the core, and you can have as many cores as you want. So if you had that kind of deployment where you needed to keep some stuff on-prem and some stuff in the cloud, we're not going to charge you for the core. It's only the edge data. It's only the edge instance that we charge for.
Okay, is there a minimum requirement of number of edges we need to have for licensing?
Nope. Not any. Sorry. No, not anymore.
So even if it's one site also, we'll be able to sell it, yeah?
Yes, you can do that. We do have some customers that actually just buy it, one site license.
Okay. And GFC, is it the licenses are free with our CVO or ANF yet? The policies have been changed?
No, that was a limited offer from the acquisition, and as of the 1st of September, it is the same price no matter what backend storage platform it is from NetApp. So on-prem, cloud, ANF, CVS, CVO, it's all the same price now of $3,000 per edge.
Okay, excellent. Okay, any more questions, people who are in the meeting?
Thank you so much, Lee.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much for the precious information which you have given, Lee. It was excellent, crystal clear. So I'll be stopping the recording now.
Mm-hmm.